What's up, guys? Jared Richmond here from the Unfair Advantage podcast. Sorry, I was telling Trevor I'm a little under the weather, but here we are. Trevor's going to be one of our first repeat uh, people on our podcast. So congratulations. This is
That's
the
cool.
podcast where you'll get like 10 views. So thank you for coming on the podcast.
Well, I
Last
think
time,
I think some of
what's
the
that?
clips do pretty well. Like a few grand
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah, the clip. Well, especially the ones you're in, man.
Especially
Yeah,
lately.
yeah, the clips do pretty good. Yeah, exactly. The ones that you've been on recently. That's one of the reasons I wanted to get you back on. You've been in the middle of some controversy, shall we say, in the weightlifting world, which is kind of funny because I would consider you pretty soft spoken.
Yeah, I don't try
And
to be like outspoken about a whole lot. Like I know a lot of people have their beliefs and I just I don't know, somebody kind of struck a nerve and so I was like, "All right, well, I'll give my 2 cents." And now it's just been kind of a shit show the last couple weeks.
well, I think also it's like you have your weightlifting experience and then you have your clinical experience, right? And a lot of people don't have that background that you have.
For sure.
And so they kind of don't have the, like, you're just like, dude, I know for a fact this is bullshit. Like, I have to say something. Like,
Yeah.
it's doing a disservice to like everybody else if I don't say something, right? Because it's like, you know that it's not true. Where I think a lot of people maybe don't 100% know that it's not true. They might more easily buy into some of this stuff. So, anyways, that was one of the reasons that I wanted to get you on. And then, last time we talked about a lot of stuff regarding sports performance. This time I wanted to talk a little bit more weightlifting because that's what we both kind of know and love. So, yeah, glad to have you back on.
Yeah, thanks for asking. It's cool to be one of the early repeat guests anyway.
Yeah, so I know you've been doing a lot of these podcasts since you started being a little controversial on the
Yeah.
internet.
I don't even have that big of a following, but it's like a little over 5,000, but I've been on like 5 podcasts in the past month. It's weird.
Are you talking about like fascial training on all of them? Is that the thing?
It gets brought up, but
Okay.
mostly it's like yours. It's like, all right, let's just talk about weightlifting or like general sports performance, common things you see in, the chiropractic world or the PT world um, or whatever that you don't necessarily agree with that could be better or things that are great. Like I was on a podcast called Red Gauge and I was like, yeah, I think a lot of people do a lot of things really well, or at least well enough that it helps a significant amount of people. They may miss the top 10% with just knowledge gaps or they're too busy to really give the 10% of those people the quality of time or care that they need. But for most people, they can help like a vast majority of the patient population that they treat or coach or whatever you want to whatever profession they see people in.
Right. So let's real quick, let's remind people kind of what you do and your background. So play college baseball, right?
Yep.
After college baseball, transition straight into weightlifting, or did you do anything in between?
I kind of messed around for like a year or so, just like normal bro training, just
Okay.
because I didn't really know. I had done some cleans and squats, and I worked up. I ended up squatting 500 pounds just after college was done. And then, like, the next week, did my first snatch. So that was like that was 10 years ago. So that was mid 2015, late 2015 that I kind of started dabbling in the weightlifting stuff and then did my first meet in 2016.
Okay. So yeah, then I got started in weightlifting in like 2015, 2016, and since have gone on to win a couple national championships. What weight class were you in the same weight class for both? Was it
Nope, I
102?
won 96 in 22 and then 102 in 23.
Gotcha. And then as your profession, you have a background in chiropractic as well
Mhm.
as like, I don't know, what do you say, like sports medicine?
Yeah, so I have for a chiropractor, I have a really weird like route to getting there. So I worked in physical therapy for the first 2 years out of undergrad. Worked in 3 different outpatient physical therapy clinics in multiple different roles. I kind of worked as an exercise tech If you're in the rehab world, you kind of know what that is. Um, and then I worked for ATI for a couple years doing that, and then I ran a sports performance department for a physical therapy company in northern Indiana. I did that for about 18 months. And that's when I realized that outpatient physical therapy was just not the world for me. They're working like
Mm.
7 to 7 most days. And really, outpatient physical therapists, unless you own your own business, they don't make that much money. So then I went and shadowed a couple chiropractors, and they were like, "Yeah, dude, I make my own schedule and I made 250 grand last year." I was like, "That sounds better to me." Um, the problem is, they don't really sell you on the dark side or like the philosophy side of chiropractic when you're shadowing someone. They're like, "Oh yeah, see, I treat all these people, help with back pain," and then with the money side, it's like, "Yeah, that sounds really appealing." And then you go through chiro school and you're like, "Uh, half of this is true. Half of this is like I can smell the bullshit from two
Yeah.
classrooms away." Like
I want to touch on that. So we are located, like, one of the reasons we know each other is because we're in Davenport, Iowa, which is
Mhm.
where Palmer Chiropractic is. So, I mean, holy cow, there's a lot
Yeah.
of chiropractors here.
Yeah.
And it's funny because we have a lot at our gym, and or have gone through the gym, coached at the gym, and all of them have different takes on different areas of chiropractic, like different methodologies, different philosophies. Um, and it's funny because a lot of them are similar to you, and they're like, "Hey, a lot of this stuff is bullshit." Obviously, a lot of them believe strongly in a specific area of chiropractic, or they believe enough in it to continue to go through school. Some have that I know have actually dropped out of school because they just don't believe in it enough. Point is, when you're at chiropractic school and you're kind of starting to smell the BS on some of the stuff here, like, are you speaking out in class, or is anybody speaking out in class? Like,
It
you know?
definitely happens. And you see, so like the first year, maybe 4 semesters or trimesters of grad school, you're basically drinking out of a fire hose through a straw. The you're taking 38 to 42 credit hours, which for people that go through undergrad, that sounds so insane, and it kind of is. Um, so you're just trying to stay afloat the first year and a half. And then once you get through that is when they start to bring in some of the philosophy stuff. Like that first year and a half is you're taking anatomy, physiology, neuro, biochem, like all of the classes that are pretty detailed and really hard. Um, so like you're like, yeah, this is a good education. I feel like I'm learning a lot. I have to work really hard to get grades good enough to even just stay in school for a lot of people. Um, and then once you get through that, you take your part one boards, and then they bring in all the philosophy stuff. So you're already 120 grand deep in an education before they start feeding you the bullshit, and you're like, sunk cost fallacy. It's like, well, shit, I guess I'm
Mm-hmm.
already halfway through. I might as well stick it out to the end and get my degree. And most people by that time kind of know which category they're going to fall into. And so do your classmates, unfortunately. So when people ask for referrals, they're like, "Hey, do you know anybody that lives in this area?" I'm like, "I do, but you're better off just throwing a dart at the map and picking the one that's closest at that point."
Mm-hmm. Do you I was gonna say, do you see like professors of, because you have these different philosophies within chiropractic. Are there professors that are like disagreeing with each other, or combating each other, or contradicting each other rather in class?
100%. It's just like every medical profession or every profession in general. It's like your last doctor is the dumbest one your new doctor's ever heard of. It's just how
Mm-hmm.
it is. It's like your last chiro said what? It's like, all right, then you go to another one, and then your last it just happens every time. Same thing with spine surgeons, same thing with pediatric specialists. Like it's super common for doctors to think that their way of thought is the only way of thought and that no other doctor has the right solution. Whether whether that happens across the board as much as it does in chiropractic or not is kind of up in the air, but yeah, you go through school and like your science professors, your you know, the people that are teaching anatomy and physiology and neuro, some of them don't necessarily have a doctorate degree in chiropractic. They'll, like, we had a forensic anthropologist was one of uh, our cadaver, our anatomy professors. It's like, all right, yeah, she knows what she's talking about when it comes to anatomy and dead bodies and like knows what to look for, right? So she's
Mhm.
qualified to teach, and she's not a chiropractor. So she would go, yeah, like these bones aren't moving back anywhere without multiple things going wrong, like ligament
And she's
ruptures,
doing
tendon
that
ruptures.
at a chiropractic university.
For sure, because they have to teach like what the science says, and then you get to the philosophy classes, and they don't have to teach what the science says because it's a philosophy class.
Mm.
And unfortunately, in chiropractic, the part four boards, so the part that I was in Davenport for, has a huge philosophy section. So like we have to learn that stuff. We have to learn the origins of chiropractic, which are insanity. Like stuff that I would never classify as healthcare ever. It was the origins. But because of governing bodies and the American Medical Association, like it has to kind of come to some type of like consensus where
Mm.
it's like, all right, do adjustments help? Yeah, maybe. Is that the foundation of chiropractic? Yeah, maybe. But like you should probably be doing a bunch of other things when it comes to the treatment of back pain. And I think a lot of chiros, it's definitely moving in the right direction, but like a lot of chiropractors are still getting, a lot of students are still getting kind of caught up and persuaded by peers or mentors that they go to.
Do you think? I think I'm asking this because I'm living in an area where there's a chiropractic office on every block.
Yeah.
Um, is that like the case where you're at, or is this profession very saturated? Like, what do you see?
No, it's not that bad here. I mean, there are still a bunch of them because we're not that far away from Iowa. We're not that far away from Chicago, which also has a chiropractic school. A new one just opened in Kentucky that's really small, but in 10 years, who knows how big that one will be. Um, so it's relatively popular here, especially because the cost of living's pretty low. Like it's an appealing place if you've grown up in the Midwest and you want to open a practice, like it's a relatively appealing place to try to open one, especially in the county that I'm in, because this is like the highest median household income in the Midwest is outside of like Chicago. Even then, I think Carmel, Indiana is like the the biggest or the highest median income per household in the Midwest. But so it's attractive because people pay cash. Kairos don't want to deal with insurance companies. But yeah, if you go to those cities where Cairo schools are, Davenport, St. Louis, California, wherever Palmer is in California, they have a satellite location there and they have a satellite location in Florida. If you go to any of those cities, like there are just chiropractors everywhere.
Yeah. So, um, what about like with the schooling? You said that it starts out, kind of general, um, or I guess like more of your gen eds, the stuff that actually is like based in
Yeah,
science, and then it goes into this more philosophy. Do you think that's by design, and the whole sunk cost thing is kind of baked into that, where they know, hey, we're doing this first so that people stay?
for sure. I definitely think that that's part of the curriculum development. It's like, hey, if we just give them most of the science courses, and that's part of it is the part one boards is purely science. So you have to get, it's kind of their weed out strategy. It's like, all right, well, if we don't want people, like if we don't want dumb people to make it all the way through, then we have to really front load the difficult stuff so they can't just skate by and make it through because they're able to pull out a C in these courses. If we make it really hard at the beginning, like we'll weed out a bunch of those people, and people will have that sunk cost fallacy where it's like, yeah, I did all this hard work, spent 100 grand to get to this point, like I might as well finish. And that was honestly kind of the boat that I was in. But here we are. Now I work in spine
Yep.
surgery. So
It's funny because sunk cost fallacy. I mean, that affects us every day. I
For
think
sure.
like one of the biggest signs of intelligence is for people to be able to acknowledge or be aware of their self being taken advantage of. Like the sunk cost fallacy is like, you right now you're able to look back and say, yeah, that definitely affected my decision making. Um, but I think logical fallacy. So I have this take. I think like pretty much all um, I don't know, a lot of disagreements in life come from people not understanding the difference between correlation and causation, or just different logical fallacies. And I think in weightlifting, um, we see these athletes who are very good weightlifters, and um, we say, hey, let's do the type of training that they're doing, right? Like, in maybe myofascial training, or something
Yeah.
along those lines, right? And we see, hey, well, they're the best athlete, or one of the top athletes, and they do this training. I should probably do this training because that training is causing their success, right? When in reality, it might be correlated through the fact that um, they're coached by an athlete or coached by a coach who also, you know, runs that type of training. Or I don't even know how to describe it, dude. What I don't even know what you call
Yeah.
that, but they also,
Yeah, so you're kind of tiptoeing around it, trying to be nice, which I get. Um, but like, so if you look at that type of training, that's not the type of training that got them to the point where they were good.
right,
And I think this happens a lot in coaching. So like, for example, you and I have a 10-year training history, and the training that we did the first 6 years might not be how we would coach somebody now, but would we have gotten to the point in training at year 8 or 9 if we didn't do what our training looked like years 1 through 6?
right.
So, like now, for example, I don't really do much variation. I do a lot of snatches and clean and jerks from the floor, lots of pulls and squats. That's a majority of what my training looks like. But the first 1 to 3 years, it's like, yeah, I did a lot of snatch balances and hang snatches and push presses and a bunch of variation just because you have to learn what those positions feel like. And if you only do snatch and clean and jerk, like particularly early, I think you're really missing out on developing some characteristics, whether it's stability or just general strength or understanding what different positions feel like. And I think that happens a lot, particularly in weightlifting, because coaches don't really spend a ton of time on education during their career, but after, when they start coaching, like, okay, I need to figure out all, like, there are a bunch of different coaching options, a bunch of different routes. I need to
Mm.
figure out some philosophy to base my coaching around, and instead of doing the training that got them to that point, whether it's from a sales perspective or a content perspective, I'm not quite sure, but I think it happens a lot, especially in our realm.
So, do you think that people, coaches that push this fascial training or whatever, do you think they actually like truly believe in it, or do you think they're just pushing it? Like, have they
There's
convinced
probably
themselves of
a
it?
There's probably a little bit of both, and it goes back to those logical fallacies. It's like, okay, well, they say they were having an issue, right? Whether it's back pain, knee pain, they feel like their bar is looping, whatever. Okay, and then they regress the lift so much to a point where, if you're doing 150, you regress the lifts to doing 70 kilos, you can really feel differences in positions. Like, okay, I can really feel my hamstrings here because I can move 70 kilos however I want to move it,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's good or bad. And so I think sometimes they'll feel their hamstrings more, or they'll feel something that they felt like they were missing with their prior training, and then think, oh yes, this was for sure the solution. Well, maybe not. Maybe if you can snatch 160 like that, then awesome. Then maybe. But I think a lot of it is hey, this guy had this, gave me a solution to a problem that I had, whether it follows any kind of logic or not. Kind of like the chiro stuff. It's like, yeah, adjustments aren't moving my bones back into place, but it did make my back feel better. So I'm going to trust this guy with multiple different aspects of my healthcare, as opposed to, okay, maybe that adjustment had a little bit of something to do with my back pain feeling better, but, you know, following the appeal to authority fallacy, I think gets a lot of people, including coaches and clinicians, in trouble.
I think you hit the nail on the head as far as kind of comparing it to chiropractic too, because what you're saying is you don't know which variable is really doing the work. You're saying, hey, maybe you started doing myofascial training at the same time as regressing the lifts, and maybe starting to do a different exercise or a different intensity, or changing your technique in a certain way, which is probably what caused the progress that you saw. And then you're correlating it, or you're assuming causation from the myofascial training that you also started doing at the same time. I think chiropractic's similar, because at the end of the day, things do get better with time, generally speaking, right? And
Yeah.
I think that people go through a chiropractic adjustment, and then the chiropractor says that, hey, we need to give this time, and the time is what does the healing, and maybe not so
Yeah.
much the adjustment, right?
Yeah, I think it's a huge coincidence that a lot of chiropractic treatment plans are 12 weeks when the average time for acute onset low back pain, the average time for it to go away on its own also happens to be between 8 and 12 weeks. So it's
Interesting.
like,
Right.
yeah,
What's doing the work here? To kind of go
yeah,
back to what you were saying about the basically how you started training and how you train now. That's what Chad Smith and I talked about a little bit. He's kind of coined that as like the pyramid of strength, and the whole idea is like, when you're younger, he says less qualified at the sport, which basically just means you're not as good at the sport yet. Your training needs to be more general, right? And more things kind of carry over to the thing that you're trying to get good at, right? So when you first started playing baseball, you probably played other sports growing up too. And all those sports kind of carried over to baseball in some way, right? Like you said, you played basketball for a while, right?
yep,
So, basketball, there's a lot of speed components that are going to help you with baseball, hand-eye coordination, flexibility, certain plyometric, exercises. A lot of those things are going to carry over to baseball. Eventually, your time is basically there's a point of diminishing returns with that. And, as you grow as a baseball player, basketball is going to have less and less transference towards baseball, right? And you're eventually, if you want to continue to get better at baseball, you're going to have to replace your basketball training with baseball, right? And it's kind of the same idea in weightlifting. As you said, you said you don't do a whole lot of variation. Me neither. It's funny because I tell people, just don't look at how I train now, right? And I think some people think, oh, he's going to program for me like he trains himself. And it's like, when you first start, there's lots of drills, right? So I'm actually kind of big on, I think drills, don't get me wrong, I think they have their place, especially with athletes who aren't as naturally, maybe receptive to certain things. You can have them do drills in weightlifting that will elicit a certain result for them. But at the end of the day, once you get to a certain point and your technique's pretty good in weightlifting, you just got to kind of do more snatch, clean, and jerk, right?
yeah, exactly. That specificity comes a long way, and as you get better, that specificity narrows down for the most part.
Yeah. And so my kind of theory on this whole pyramid of strength is like, I think that people should try to eke as much progress out of as general training as possible. Essentially, it's hard to know like how long that should be. But like I would just say, when I have a kid, I want to keep their training extremely general for as long as I can, and hope that they continue to make progress, right? Like basically, let's say that they play lots of sports. They might always have a sport that they're like, this is the sport that I really like. I would encourage them to continue to stay general as long as they're making some sort of progress, or at least like adequate progress in the sport that they really want to excel at. And then it's not till we absolutely have to do we take away some of these sports. I know that sounds a little bit like almost like too good to be true, but I think in weightlifting you can do that, especially. A lot of my athletes, I stay way more general with them than I did with me. Like I went very specific pretty quickly, I think, and I think that was a fault of my. Like, I think that made me suffer long term, because I think I got to a
In weightlifting or like basketball?
weightlifting. Yeah, weightlifting.
Okay.
Yeah, no, not bad. I mean, I'm 5'8", dude. I was only gonna be so good at basketball, but
That was the limiting factor in
yeah, that was
basketball.
the limiting factor in
Thank
basketball.
God.
No, I think I just got to the point in weightlifting where, um, I, I squatted all the time. I snatch, clean, jerked heavy all the time. I was really good at singles. My technique was really good. I think that I could have done, and the problem is too, I didn't start till later on, right? Like you kind of the same thing with you. We didn't start till later. So I felt like I had to rush things a little bit for logistical reasons. Like, hey, like you got to go to work here shortly. Like you might want to like get good before you got to like commit your life to work and kids and stuff. But I would have probably built a bigger base, as far as like more general strength, more general leg strength. Did a little bit more variations of the lifts, for a little bit longer and seeing if I could make progress that way. And then honestly, what it really boils down to, I might have done CrossFit longer because that is just
Oh, yeah,
super
same.
general training, right? Like at the end of the day, what is that?
Yeah,
That's just like really, really general
PPP.
training, right? So when I quit doing CrossFit, you probably don't know this. So when I quit doing CrossFit, I think it was 2016, August 2016. I did I signed up for a weightlifting meet in Chicago. I think it was in September, and it was to try to qualify for the American Open finals in December. Well, American Open at the time, and this was in Orlando, that year. So I trained weightlifting only from August to September before that meet. Did the meet, qualified, for American Open finals, but before I switched, like before I stopped doing CrossFit, my best snatch was 125 kilos, and my best clean and jerk was, it's pounds. I'm trying to think, about 147 maybe, right? Like
Okay.
325,
Yeah.
something like that. And those were PRs that I had hit. So basically, what I did was in August we hosted this like local weightlifting meet, but it was just like at the CrossFit gym, and it was unsanctioned, and it was super cool. It was like in front of the river,
Yeah.
but I hit PRs at that meet. So I hit those numbers at that meet. So before that, even I was at like 265 pounds, so like 120 kilos, and maybe like 100, 315 pound clean jerk. Anyways, in so within 4 months of training, weightlifting only, I went from those numbers to at the American Open finals, I did 135, 158, I think. So, added a lot to
What
my
weight class?
total. 85. I was always an 85 until
Which session were you in?
C, I think. C session. I won the
We,
won the C session.
because I think we were in the same session. That was my first finals, 2016 finals in Orlando,
In the 85 session?
in the 85s.
Really? So
I
I
know, hard to
know
believe
I
now,
know
but
Ken Toll was in my session, I'm pretty sure.
I don't even know who that is, to be
Really?
honest.
He's
That
a
was my last meet as an 85.
okay, that's crazy.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think because I was
you
in the
probably don't
85
even
C
look the
section.
same. Like
No, I was tiny, dude.
yeah,
Tiny. Like you could actually see like my jawline because my neck wasn't, 20 inches wide.
right. Yeah, yeah, I saw some pictures of you playing baseball and you look like a different person. Um
Yeah, completely different human.
so yeah, anyways, did those numbers there. So and then I qualified for nationals, and then I trained only weightlifting again from December to I think it was May. Um and I clean and jerk, I snatched 143, clean jerked 171. Like, so my point with this whole thing is that when I quit CrossFit, that's where I saw all my progress like within the first like year. Like it was
Hmm.
crazy. Like just from going from super general training to like super specific training for weightlifting. And so what I'm getting at is like I don't know if I could I have snatched those numbers eventually while doing like really general training still and then switched to more specific training and then had a higher peak. I don't know.
Yeah, like if you did that general training and expanded that initial timeline out for a couple years, definitely.
Or just not maybe
I
went
think,
full bore like Bulgarian.
yeah,
Like yeah.
yeah, true. Were you with Jug at that point?
No, so I just did my own thing for a while and then
Oh, okay.
when I would go to this gym in Chicago called Sayre Park every
Oh, I know where Fair Park is.
yeah, so um I would train at like the CrossFit gym that I coached at up in Chicago and then on Saturdays I would go train at Sayre Park and a coach there I remember told me like he was like, "Hey, he's like, Jared, I'm gonna tell you something right now. Like, you're gonna have a lot of coaches like reach out to you in the coming months because like nobody knew who I was." He goes, "They're all gonna try to ride your coattails." He goes, "Don't let them." Like, he's like, "Don't," you know. He's like, "They're all gonna be like, hey, I want to coach you. I want to coach you." But anyways, so I didn't have anybody to count for me down in Orlando, and I didn't know anybody because I was just I was a CrossFitter,
No.
and so they had there's a guy named Mike Carshoot, that was a really good Olympic weightlifter, long time ago. And they asked him if he would be down there to coach me, and he wouldn't. But he said Lou DeMarco, his buddy Lou DeMarco would. Lou is actually in Ohio, somewhere I think. But anyway, so Lou, I think he was like 78 at the. I, I don't know how old he is now. He's super old, but he's awesome. Like Lou's awesome. Anyways, I met him down there. He counted for me, and then he kind of like I had a really good meet, and he kind of became my coach. It was more of like a consulting thing where it was like we would bounce some ideas off each other, but at the end of the day, I did my own
Yeah,
programming. And then I got
nice.
recruited. I didn't get recruited by Juggernaut until 2018, so like 2 years later. And by that
Okay,
point,
nice.
or maybe yeah, no, yeah, it would have been after that Arnold. So 2018 Arnold. So
2017 Arnold?
2018. 2017 is
28
when me and you met.
when you and I did it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
2018. The next year I had a better meet. Um,
Okay.
I'm that was like my best meet. Probably I think that was like
Gotcha.
my best meet ever, and I got um, and then they kind of reached out to me, and I started working with them, but then I was already kind of toasted by that point. So, but
Really,
yeah, I just think I could have made more progress if I stayed more general longer. What do you think?
for sure. I mean, I definitely agree. At least to some extent. I feel like, and it also depends on how old you are.
Right.
Like, because if you get into weightlifting at the time we did, in my mid 20s, it's like, all right, I know I don't have a ton of time to really get good at this, so I'm just gonna have to do very specific training from day one. Now, weightlifting specific training at that point was still snatch balances and, you know, a bunch of variation, but like someone like Colby, for example, it's like, all right, well, he's going to make the Olympics, even though he's only been weightlifting for 2 years, like he's going to make the Olympics. He can't be doing a bunch of general stuff right now. Like he just
Right.
needs to get better at snatch and clean and jerk. So it's definitely situationally dependent, but I think the the best fight or the best argument or example that I've seen for not specifying too early is intramural college sports. If you did you play intramurals at all in college?
That's funny you say that. I was an intramural referee. That was my job. I ref
Really?
intramural basketball. I played like we had like a ref team, but yeah, dude. Like
Hmm.
I mean, I was a very good or high school basketball player. So intramural sports didn't really appeal to me that much, if I'm being honest. So
Yeah,
like yeah, but I needed money, so I refed, and then we created a team
gotcha.
together. But yeah, the biggest thing was them motherfuckers take it so fucking seriously,
So seriously.
and
And
they yell at you
I
so
wasn't
much. It's crazy.
yeah, the rest got so much shit. It's like, bro, I'm making $12
I
to be here right
literally
now.
would just tell I could just tell him I'm like I know you didn't play organized basketball or you weren't any good because you're taking this shit way too seriously. You never I played for
Yeah,
actual like sectional like state like
yeah,
you know championships. It's like
for
that's
sure.
what was on the line. You got a fucking t-shirt on the line, dude. Like relax,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, so my like, and this could be completely different where you were at, but because I went to a really small school, like if you weren't in season, you were playing intramural sports.
Yeah, not
And
where I went. I don't think they're allowed.
and in our conference, I think it was really popular because all of the guys that I played baseball against also played intramural basketball. And maybe that's just because it's like an Indiana thing. So we
Okay.
all played high school basketball and then played college baseball because, short white guys. But um but like if you looked at like the wrestlers, because wrestling specializes earlier than basically every sport that I know.
Hmm.
But the wrestlers had a team, football players had a team, soccer players had a team, baseball players had a team. And baseball would destroy everybody every year, didn't matter. My senior year, the whole basketball team quit because they didn't like the coach. Like the coach, like whatever.
Yeah.
They all quit, played intramurals, and we lost to them by two.
Oh
So it's like,
wow.
okay, like granted, we had some really good guys from high school, like guys that were all state in high school, but it's like, all right, well, we're also just went to the World Series for baseball. So it's like that having that multiple sports background just carries over to everything forever,
Yeah, I would argue though part of that's just baseball is a very hand-eye coordination
for
dominant
sure.
sport, right? It's like a very high skill sport, and I think that it's crazy. Basketball is kind of a unique combination of skill and athleticism. Um,
For sure.
I tell a lot of my athletes like, uh, I oversimplify this, but I truly believe that sports is basically this equation. It's A plus B equals C. A is your skill in the sport. B is your physical traits. C is your performance, right? So point is like you'll have some guys who are I'll even myself in weightlifting. My skill, I believe, in snatch, clean, jerk is very high. I think my technique is very good. I'm very efficient in lifts. My physical traits are not super high. My legs were never very strong, blah, 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 blah. So I was a decent weightlifter because of the high skill and, I don't know, medium physical traits. You got NBA players that are, like I would say, Shaq, maybe, like relatively low skill, very high physical traits, right? Hall of Famer. But then you got Michael Jordan, you got LeBron, you got these guys, very high skill, very high physical traits. They're the best of all time, right? Then you have guys like Steve Kerr, maybe, or even Steph Curry, I would say, is probably not super high on the physical traits, but extremely high skill. Where baseball, though, I would say is more on the skill, less on the physical traits. And I think you're seeing it a little bit more now, though.
Yeah, I definitely partially agree with that. But like my college coach really instilled it into us, which is why I think I found the weight room so appealing, is all things being equal. So skill, you know, and playing the law of averages, like skill, we're all, between 5'10" and 6'1", between 180 and 200 pounds. So like the physical attributes, at least like in the same conference, aren't going to be dramatically different. Now, when you compare like my conference to the SEC, you're gonna have some physical attributes that are different just because the quality of athlete that gets recruited there.
Right.
But all things being equal, the stronger player is going to win. The stronger player is going to be able to throw harder, going to be able to hit the ball further, going to be able to get hits off of not squaring the ball up more just because their average exit velo is going to be higher. So I think that a lot of athletes and parents of athletes kind of miss out on that, and because they spend so much money on weekly hitting lessons and fielding lessons and pitching or, shooting basketball wise.
Yep.
But all things being equal, the stronger person's going to win, and strength, in my opinion, strength and power output will make up for skill development, particularly at the beginning and intermediate levels, and then your skill catches up as you move on. But developing those physical attributes early is something I think a lot of parents miss out on. Because, for example, look at someone like Morgan McCullough.
Hmm.
It's like, all right, our skills probably relatively similar, but because he was able to develop those physical attributes at 14, like he's just going to be better than me.
Yep.
Like
100%. It
it's
takes
just
longer to develop physical, attributes. I think that's like the part that people miss out on is like, hey, you should start now because there's no real way to expedite this. Like we can do everything right as far as your training goes, and it's still gonna take years to build your physical
10,000
traits.
hours.
Right. Where
Yeah.
let's be honest, like there are like people who can pick up, certain skills very, very quickly. Right. And I think that's where, snatch and clean jerk, I think to go back to that, some people get it wrong where, so like with Colby, let's go back to Colby. You were saying that you don't think, hey, he can't be doing a lot of general training when he's going to be training for the Olympics. No, but I think what a lot of people will do is he'll go to the Olympics, and then when he's done, he'll stay in like this perpetual peaking phase, right? And he'll never get general again. And I think that's where I would argue that after the Olympics, he could maybe spend, and this is where like fucking the way that the US system works and you got to earn spots and shit really fucks people. But, I think technically speaking, he could spend 3 years in a general phase and then maybe a
Yeah.
year where he peaks. And I think that ratio, my point is I think that you can peak out way quicker than you think skill wise.
Yeah, I think so too. Just the qualification procedures for the Olympics and how the US has decided to allocate funding, I think really bottlenecks those people, like particularly the multiple time Olympians like Jordan and uh, I'm putting Maddie in that boat, even though she's only made it once. She's been right there for so long, but they have to stay. And you qualify for the Olympics 2 years out, mostly because if you don't make that first meet 2 years out, you don't even get the opportunity to in the future.
Right.
Like it's not like 2012 where Ilya did one meet before the Olympics and qualified. It's like no, you have to make yourself available for drug testing. I think it's like 18 or 20 months before the Olympics. It's like, okay. Like I get it. You want to keep the sport clean, but A, that's not working. And B, everybody's getting hurt. So something's got to
Dude.
give. Hopefully, with the new weight class changes and some changes in leadership at the IWF, hopefully something happens. But the way they went about this weight class change does not keep my hopes
What
high.
are you going to
I'm gonna get fat. I'm not cutting to 92.
do? Dude, you're going to fill it out? Like you're going to go full bore?
I probably won't fill it out. I'll probably walk around at like 107, 108 and just stay there, not have to cut.
Have you
Like I'll
had
walk around at like 105 now, 104, 105.
have you had this discussion
So
with your
next
wife?
10 pounds. She doesn't care. As long as I'm not like floppy. I think I would get annoyed with being fat before she would,
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. I think I'd be the same.
especially because like if you like okay, say I do weigh 240 pounds.
Yeah.
Like, okay, and then you look at and this is going to be bad, but and then you look at her friends' husbands who also weigh 240 pounds, and it's going to look a lot different.
It's a good thing that that nobody listens to this podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Flip that part.
Oh, we're gonna clip the fucking middle part. I'll tell you that right now. That part's gone. That part is absolutely gone. That should have been talked
Bro,
about.
you started going down that rabbit hole. I was like,
Yeah.
man, Jared wasn't kidding about getting risky today.
Now that will be clipped out 100%. So sorry, people. You'll have to tune in every week to see if I ever go down that rabbit hole again. All right. Anyways, to go back to sports, I think that what we're trying to get at here is that like general training maybe should take up a lot more. I mean, for example, dude, like I thought you had to snatch a clean jerk every day. Like I just thought you had to do it, right? Like, and you had to do it every day, all year. And if you didn't, you're gonna fucking, you're gonna get way worse, right? And I think a lot of people
And
think,
squat 4 times a week.
yeah, exactly, exactly. It's crazy right now. Coming back from this hip surgery, I'm snatching and clean and jerking once a week on Saturday, and that's even if I'm in town. So I'm like every other week sometimes. And I've been adding 5 kilos a week to my total. And it's because I know how to fucking snatch and clean and jerk, dude. I don't,
Yeah.
like, yeah, I'm a little rusty, but like, I didn't just fucking forget how to do it. So it's the same thing though with these, I got baseball kids, I got basketball kids, and all they fucking do is play the sport all year round. And it's like, dude, your issue is not that you can't shoot. Your issue is that you can't fucking run or jump, right? You can't touch the net. So maybe you quit worrying about, shooting every day and you get in the gym, right?
Yeah. And maybe that's the difference, like kind of like I was talking about with intramurals earlier. It's like when I was growing up, we didn't really have the access to indoor baseball, so we all were forced to play basketball.
Mm-hmm.
Like we just, especially where I grew up, was pretty poor Midwest. Like basketball was huge. It's Indiana. So, all right, well, it's too cold to go outside and hit now, so we go play basketball for 6 months, and then when it's warm enough again, we'll go back outside. Um, and that's, I mean, that I would attribute that to my athleticism and how easily I picked up snatch and clean and jerk. Like I snatched 100 kilos in 2 weeks of training, and people were like, "What the?"
That is
Like
crazy.
CrossFitters that I knew were like, "What?" And I was like, "Is this not normal?" Like I don't know. I just saw a snatch the first time a couple months ago. Like,
Did you make
but
contact
yeah,
when you first started lifting? That was my thing. I remember
yeah,
not making contact. I could not
because I had
figure
done
it out.
clean before, so like I kind of
Oh
knew
yeah.
what that was supposed to feel like. Um, but the overhead, like I couldn't sit in the bottom of a squat, and like my overhead position because I benched a lot, I was like super tight and internally rotated. But I cleared that up.
I bench a lot still. I don't
Do
know. I
you?
don't think it affects me. Yeah. You know what they
I
say?
bench like once a year
I
just for
I
fun.
bench because I'm good at it and I like having big
I
titties.
say. Yeah, I benched. The last time I benched was last August in Germany. Um, so I had done like snatches, behind the neck
Yeah.
jerks, and I was waiting for Zach Hughes to finish training, and he takes forever. But I was waiting for him to finish training, so me and JP, one of his athletes, went and bench pressed in like the next hall, and I bench pressed 160 kilos.
What?
Like, yeah, and I bench
Dude.
press like once a year. Just all the overhead training with
Yeah.
weightlifting, like my shoulders are really strong, so I press with my shoulders and my tricep. Like I have a really narrow grip,
Yeah.
and I just press with my and my butt comes up a little bit. Like it's
Oh,
not a
whatever.
powerlifting bench press, but yeah, it's like would qualify in a football weight room, I think.
160. I think my best bench, and I bench a lot, is well, you gotta think I've also like been injured a lot in my lower body, so
Yeah,
like my upper body is like the only thing I can do. I think my best bench is 365, which is what, 165 ish, so not much more.
yeah,
So that was paused
yeah.
though.
But- And you also weigh like 40 kilos less than me right
I
now.
probably weigh 90, 91 or
Maybe,
something like
okay,
that.
so it's
I
not that
probably weigh
not
like
that far off,
90.
you know,
Yeah, I'm
12.
fat, super fat. But my wife in college bought me this shirt that said "No pecs, no sex." So,
So you have to bench.
so that's
That's
what I
funny.
do. All right, let's
That's
let's
hilarious.
dive a little bit in before we shut this off. Let's dive into this kind of bullshit fascial training we've kind of touched on. So, what is that? What, I don't understand. Honestly, I don't know what it is, to be honest. And then, why are people doing it? What are they claiming it's for? And then, why do you think it's stupid?
Okay, so there are a couple different factions, right? And these factions separate, in my opinion, they separate from a lack of education because, like, particularly when you're in a field, the higher your level of education, the better you are at sniffing out BS.
Hmm.
Now, that level of education doesn't necessarily transfer to being able to smell bullshit in other areas of life, like politics or econ or whatever. But like if you go to school for a subject in physiology, it's like your ability to detect bullshit in a realm around anatomy and physiology is going to be really high. So I think some of these like training factions separate just from a lack of ability to assess that information appropriately and then apply it. So so one of the schools of thought around like fascial training which is the one that's a little bit more prominent in the weightlifting side of things, is that there's some magical connection between the foot, the glute, and the core that doing toe curls like or doing some like posterior chain activation type drills increases that connection's ability to produce force. Where this is coming from is absolutely beyond me, but the like the they talk about tensegrity, which is like a very quantum mechanics field theory about like balance, right? But they're trying to apply this very hypothetical um, like physics base to anatomy, and there's just not any substance for it. So like I'm sure you've heard of like being quad dominant or hamstring dominant, right? A lot of people, I mean, they make $1 million machines, like cybernetic machines, to test quad versus hamstring strength, right? But but fixing, like, say you are quad dominant and you need to have a little bit more of a posterior chain. Fixing that with toe curls is so counterintuitive because, okay, if I need my hamstring stronger, there are a billion actual things we can do. RDLs, hamstring curls, Nordics, like all of those things are musculoskeletal based to produce more force. Whether that's from a neurologic factor, like you're just learning to produce more force, that that connection is getting more smooth, or and that's don't don't get it confused. That's a neural process top down, not fascia process
What is fascia?
increased integration. Just so there are multiple different types of fascia, superficial, deep, and then, but I think, and this is one of those things, they just kind of lump it all into one and say, here you go. But my assessment of it is they're talking about epimysial fascia, which is what surrounds the muscle, kind of connects muscles to bones,
Is
not
that
in a tendon
I was
way,
gonna
but
say
in
okay.
not in a tendon way, but in like a connects the middle of your hamstring belly to the middle of your femur,
Mm,
right?
okay.
Like, it's not just
Not at the
floating there, like, there's
attachments, but it's more like
yeah,
in
not
them.
at the actual attachments, but, like, kind of connecting it to the skeletal structure. But the problem is they also conflate that into taking tendon research where we know, like, collagen fiber rearrangement and the ability for the tendon to either get thicker or stronger or more elastic. So they're taking some of that data and trying to apply it to this epimysial fascia, and like that, like you can't just crossbreed references because they're made both made of collagen. It's like, all right, your hair is also made of collagen. Are we talking about hair training to improve your fascial connections to your back? It's like, no, like, what are we, like, as much as of a reach as that is, like, where are you coming up with this shit?
Right, right. So what like okay, you had mentioned how you think that okay, well they just aren't educated enough to spot the bullshit essentially, right? Well, here's the thing. I'm not educated and it sounds like bullshit to me. I think I'm a very good general bullshit detector. I
Yeah,
think
and some people are better than others, and you've been in training long enough
yeah.
that,
But
like,
it's
you
hard.
could usually
I think my thing is like I've just found that the only things that work are hard training. Toe curls don't work because they aren't hard. What you had said about doing like hamstring exercises like Nordic curls and whatever else, it's like yeah, those are hard and that's why they work, right? They're challenging, or you can make them very challenging. And also it takes a lot of time to you have to go to a gym and do those. Where at a toe curl, so you're saying that I can fix all my problems at home in front of my TV, just by curling my toes, right? Like that's sexy.
what a great what a great selling solution.
Right, right. Everything that we're talking about today, like some of the chiropractic things, it's all like, oh, hey, what's this really simple way, easy way that we can fix you instead of like, hey, this is gonna be like kind of a long and like arduous process that might suck at times. It's like, nope, snap, crackle, pop, you're good to go.
Yeah, exactly. And or like, "Oh, I don't like squatting deep. Squatting deep hurts my knees. It's hard. Oh, I have a solution. Let's just do half squats. You can do them heavier, and then I'm gonna say that these squat progress gains are equal to the progress or greater than the progress that you would see doing full squats." It's like, okay, everybody can load a 6-inch box squat up with 1,000 pound. Like,
Who's saying that?
you're
I mean,
not.
are we just talking about Joel Seedman now, or
Got it. Yeah, okay.
no?
Okay.
I'm
Yeah, yeah. I'm saying it's the same pathway to
yeah.
selling a secret, a trade secret that they're the only one that happens to sell because everybody else knows that it's bullshit, but you sell it to people that either A, don't have a solution. Like they feel like they've tried everything, nothing's necessarily worked for them. So like, oh, this guy says that he's got a new thing, let's try that. Or they're just selling it to people that are really new. They create a big following because fascia is right now is a key word, right? It's a
Hmm.
hot topic. Um, of which that I've benefited from a following standpoint on, right? Not a ton, but some. And so it's a hot topic right now. So, okay, I can build a huge following. If 1% of this following subscribes to my podcast or subscribes to my programming or whatever, um, like I can make a pretty good living on that. And so selling the secret is livelihood now.
Okay, so if you're trying to advise people on how to kind of spot charlatans, or people who are, making this shit up for clout, do you have any general advice as far as that goes? Is like, hey, like, because I do. I mean, my thing is basically like, hey, there's not really shortcuts. I know it sounds really lame, but like, and really like it's been overstated, but if it seems like it's gonna be a quick fix, it's probably not, right?
Yeah. It sounds too good to be true. It likely is. Also just if this guy is like so a lot of them will hide a lot of their actual programming behind a paywall.
Mm,
It's like, okay, if you're paying for information, like that's weird. If you're paying for a one-on-one consultation and individualized programming and unlimited communication to this person, like that's a bit of a different story because he's providing an individual service to you.
mm.
But if all of their information is hidden behind a paywall, like that's a pretty risky bet. Or if all of their information is cited, like for example, Seedman cites a lot of his references in his posts, but all of the sites are for articles that he's written.
Right.
Okay,
It's like
cool.
citing the same video. It's like, hey,
Yeah,
the citation for this video is this video. That's the proof.
yeah. This is right because I said so last video.
Well,
Like,
that's like,
uh,
he does a really good job of having lot of good athletes that he has doing his shit.
yeah,
And it all goes back to correlation versus causation, man. Just because he's training these good athletes doesn't mean that that they're doing much of what he's having them or what he's showing. Or two,
yeah.
it's like, dude, a lot of them are going to be studs regardless of what they do. Like, stop it.
And in his defense, like some of those guys, the only thing they need to do in the weight room is feel like they're doing something and not get hurt. And
Yep.
to be fair, standing on one leg on a Bosu ball, getting hit upside the head with another one, probably feels like you're doing something, although you're not really creating any
Yeah.
adaptations besides more CTE potentially. But
I think a lot of the athletes, and this is something I've actually done a better job of, like I think, or I've changed my philosophy a slight bit on, is like I used to be very dogmatic on my coaching approach, and I would not waver as far as like if it was if I didn't think it was, like for example, we'll throw some like kind of more, um, I don't know, like gimmicky exercises into people's training from time to time, simply because I think that they think it works better, right? So it increases a little bit of buy-in. They
yeah,
maybe have more fun with it, and so like you're saying, if you're training professional athletes, you want them to buy into what you're doing, and they are like, oh, well, I've been doing squats and deadlifts my whole life. I just need to do this weird Bosu ball, trap bar, snatch. And that's the secret sauce. It's like, okay, well, I guess we'll throw that in once. So you do that, and then we'll do all the shit that actually is what's going to make you stronger, right?
for sure. If I was coaching high school boys consistently, it's like I would end basically every session with run the rack dumbbell curls.
Yeah.
Get a huge bicep pump because that's what those kids care about. It's like, yeah, we can do the squats, but desserts this but these bicep curls, and then you can go flex in the mirror with your friends and measure who's got the biggest biceps, and then you're all going to keep coming back because you had fun at the end of that session. And we get a bunch of work done early, and then you can, get your chest pump, get your bicep pump at the end, and that's going to create more buy-in with from a coach client relationship than basically any exercise that you give a teenage boy.
I think you just showed me a new thing we're gonna start doing. I'm just gonna have all my
Bro,
guys
or
start
like
doing that.
run the rack on some lateral raises and get a huge shoulder pump where they can't, they can't
Yeah.
like lift their arms up. You want to know what kind of buy-in that's going to get with a 16-year-old boy that's trying to get a girlfriend? Like,
Yeah, and then they're gonna be like walking billboards for us too, because they're all gonna be super jacked, right?
yeah, for sure.
I love that. I
You
love
get you
that.
get the guy at your gym that's got the hottest girlfriend in school, you're going to get more guys to come into the gym.
Well, that's what we get a lot of female athletes in our gym, and I think that's probably
Oh,
why
really?
we
That's
get a
good.
lot of our male athletes. Like
Male
we,
athletes.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
something we're starting to
What
notice more recently.
what's that? What's the Mark Wahlberg in the Rock movie?
What?
Pain and Gain? Is
Yeah,
that
no
what it's
pain, no
called?
gain. I think, or yeah, pain and
Yeah,
gain.
they
Yeah,
where they give strippers free memberships to the gym, and then a bunch of old dudes join.
we are not calling you strippers, girls.
No, 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 no. Just a similar, thought process.
Right. All right. Well, let's finish this up. I know this is kind of weird one. I'm gonna have to piece it together a little bit. But
That's
what do
right.
you got? What do you want to get out there? What's the next meet you got coming up? When am I gonna see you next?
I was thinking about doing nationals, but then I was like, at such a handicap with, like at the time, having to cut a bunch of weight or gain a bunch of weight
Hmm.
to like feel competitive. That I was like, all right, I'm just gonna give myself till finals to like try to gain some not just straight fat and water weight. Um, So I'm thinking the next one's going to be finals. I might do like a little local meet for the first time in, 4 years before that.
What's
But
your diet look like right now?
I mean, I eat relatively fine. I do still eat quite a bit of pizza, but
Well, then how are
you
you
know,
gonna get fat? That's what I'm saying. How are you gonna get fat?
I mean, I'll just have to, throw some ice cream and some some s'mores that we got the fireplace out back now, so throw some s'mores and some ice cream and do some of that right before I go to bed.
Like every night, right?
I might I might have to get to that. I mean, I only have like 8 pounds to gain. Gained a pound a month until finals. Like
What
I'll
do
be
you weigh
good.
right now?
I walk around like 104, 105. So, if I walk around at 108,
I think you should try to
like
get
that's
to
not,
115. Fill it out.
bro, no chance. No chance. Oh, I'm already out of breath walking up the stairs some nights. If I weighed 115,
But imagine how much you'd snatch at 115.
it'd probably be more clean and jerk.
Yeah.
Like Akbar Jarayev, you know who that is?
Yeah.
Yeah, so when he tried to gain that weight, his like snatch didn't move. He stayed right
Mhm.
around like 195, 200, but his clean and jerk went from like 220 to 245.
I mean, that's what you need help with, right?
I mean, you're not wrong.
I
I
mean,
did clean 190 again a couple weeks ago. I didn't post that because I missed the jerk, obviously, but
hey, why didn't you make that
160.
163?
I was walking it forward and there was a bar like right there and I was like
Uh,
trying to stop it before I like took another step into the bar and just kind of ran out of room and like didn't want to risk it. Good training make. I'm counting it.
what did
If
you make
someone
before
asks me
that?
what my best match is, I'm definitely saying 163.
So low key, that's what I do with 150. I had a very similar snatch with 150. I think it was maybe more of a make than yours. I think I actually had to dump it behind me in training. Like
Yeah.
I ran off, and then I like at the very end like threw it behind me. But yeah, that's like I always ask people, like, what's your best snatch ever? Well, here's the thing. I thought at one point I would get back and actually just smoke 150, and it wouldn't be like, whatever. It wouldn't be a
Yeah.
question, but but I may never get back there again. So we're just gonna say 150. So hey, I
Yeah.
clean and
Say
jerked
one.
140. So I did 120, 140 um,
Oh, nice.
this past Saturday.
Fulls? Or are you power cleaning?
No, I know fulls. So yeah, that's
Fulls.
even more
Nice.
impressive for me because I could barely squat 140. I did 3 sets of 5 at 140 back squat, and it was hard.
That's great. Tom Suma, right?
Yeah,
Like we were all in the same weight class for a
yeah.
while. I watched him fail a 160 front squat to start the session, snatched 130, and then clean and jerk 160 in the same session.
Failed the 160 front squat. Was he just not at his like? Was he out of shape or what?
Yeah, I mean he had like Tom goes on these huge hiatuses where he'll just like go hike the Grand Canyon for 2 weeks.
Okay.
Like he'll quit his job, go hike the Grand Canyon for 2 weeks, come back, find another job. It's insane.
Wish I could do
And
that.
yeah, but then he'll come back and like start training again. And yeah, he just failed a 160. He always, a lot of the times, he'll start with squats because it's so weak for him.
Right.
Um, but yeah, he missed a 160 front squat and then clean and jerked it an hour later.
See,
And I
but
was like, what is
that's a
going
great
on?
example of what we were talking earlier. Like, it doesn't take that long to get back into, like, he doesn't just forget how to
Skill thing.
snatch and clean and jerk when he fucking climbs Mount Kilimanjaro. Like, he still remembers
Yeah.
how to do it. And yeah, I'm the same way. I squat pretty much during the week, and then I do the lift. Like, I'm doing the lifts on Saturdays with like the guy. Like, we got a group of guys that lifts on Saturday, but I'm just
Hmm.
squatting in the mornings, and I am so like not motivated to snatch and clean jerk, so I just squat and pull and stuff in the morning and bench, and then I'm snatching and clean jerking Saturday.
I mean, that's what, like, not that the frequency is there, but that's like what Qatar does. They'll do like miso. He'll squat in the morning, whether back or front, and then do the lifts in the evening.
Mm, okay,
So,
I didn't know that.
I mean, I know a lot of countries that train 2 a days. Like Latvia did it that way. He did it that way. I know used Georgia's training style is quite a bit different. You should talk to Benson about that,
Mm-hmm.
Benson Robles,
Yeah,
because he went and trained over there for like a month.
that's a good one. I need to get him
Um,
on the podcast.
yeah,
He's
I'm
good
sure
friends
he
with
would do it
Scott.
too.
Yeah, no, I've
Yeah,
met him a couple of times. That's a really good one because he's got a cool perspective on things.
yeah, and he'd be able to talk about it now that the Olympics are over. I think he'd be able to talk about it pretty openly. So, he might still have to hide some things, but
Yeah,
I think that would be a, a good
he has to
conversation.
hide it or what? They're gonna come kill him, like the
Well,
Soviets or what?
cut this part out.
Okay. Why don't we just wrap it? We'll wrap it up quick.
Okay,
All right,
okay.
people, this was a good podcast. Maybe someday you'll get to hear what Trevor's going to tell me. Peace out.